2FM. Game On's Fantasy Football.
Yes, it's Game Week 24 of the Game On Fantasy Football podcast, and we're getting excited. It is late on Thursday night as we are recording this, and I'm glad to say joined by Phil McGrath, Paul Caffrey from Fantasy Premier League Transfers.com, I say. Good evening.
Good evening to you. It is late. We'll excuse that one.
Yes, indeed. Paul, it's been a long day, but I hope you've kept enough energy for Game Week 24.
Yes, yeah, I'm a night owl at heart, so this should be all good fun.
To it, to who? Right, let's all say it.
I hope that hasn't set the tone for the rest of the podcast.
It could be danger of that. Anyway, last week's pod was Disposable Johnson. God only knows what today's pod will be called. Let's have a quick look back at Game Week.
That Johnson did deliver.
He did, and maybe not so disposable, as a tweeter once tweeted me. Manchester United 2-0 winners over Cardiff City, and
hurrah!
It wasn't all down to Juan Mata, but why not? Van Persie on the score sheet again, and Young, his second goal of the season, and Mata, of course, with an assist. He did look good, more on that later on. Norwich held scoreless by Newcastle. Good point probably for both teams there. Southampton 2-2 against Arsenal. Great 2-2 draw for Southampton, despite the fact that they went in front. Font and Lallana with the goals for Southampton, and Cazorla and Giroud on the score sheet for Arsenal. Swansea 2-0 winners over Fulham. Chico and Shelby with the goals for Swansea, and Crystal Palace 1-0 winners over Hull City. Their defence is held strong, as we suggested. Liverpool 4-0 winners over Everton. Who would have foreseen that? Who would have thunk it? Two goals from Sturridge. Gerrard, I told you his legs had gone, scored with his head.
Yeah.
And Suarez with the other one.
And you mocked me last week.
I did. We were all a bit worried when Suarez didn't get on the score sheet, but he did pop up with one at the end. And he also got an assist. And
also got Daniel Sturridge substituted for not passing the ball.
Aston Villa 4, West Brom 3.
Cracker of a game.
Yeah, what a game! And it was a Midlands derby as well. Delph, Bacuna, Vyman, and Benteke with the goals for Villa, and Malumbu and Brunt, and a no goal from Delph counted for the West Brom score of 3. Chelsea 0, West Ham 0. It might have been 1900s football, but it was definitely effective for Sam Allardyce's men. They held Chelsea, parked a couple of buses.
Yeah, I think
burned
Chelsea
out the bus they did in the middle of the park.
It was either 36 or 38 attempts on goal throughout the game. I think it's the highest amount of attempts on goal by any team not to score.
Yeah, 36, unbelievable, wasn't it?
And both admirable for two Northside dubs. The fact that you say 36 is very good. Obviously late in the day. English listeners to the pod now will be smirking. There's the Paddies slagging themselves off about not being able to say 30. But we know
just because you don't understand us.
Yeah, just because you can't say 66th and a 6th. Yeah, there's something that English people should try and say. Sunderland 1, Stoke City 0.
Disposable
Johnson with an assist from Barini. And Spurs 1, Manchester City 5. Can anyone stop them? Maybe not even Superman. Capoe scored the one Tottenham goal. That's the easiest thing to tell you. Ericsson got the assist. Thank God. Goal scored for Manchester City. Company, Yaya Toure, Dzeko, Aguero, Jovetic. Even Jovetic got on the action. And assists, Silva, Fernandinho, and 2 from Dzeko. Little rub of the beard there. So that's how Game Week 23 panned out. But let's not talk about Game Week 23 anymore, because we're focused on Game Week 24. Right, so Paul Caffrey is going to tell us where we should be aiming at. Paul, where do you want to look for the first of this week's focus games?
We are going to go very far north, where everyone is off the beer for the month of January in anticipation of this fixture.
Surely not Newcastle.
Absolutely, Newcastle versus Sunderland.
Everyone's on the beer and in clothes. I doubt it. They're
off the beer for January. So a lot of the guys, they're on the dry and getting ready to go nuts.
Is this the players? Yeah?
Well, yeah, players, people, anyone passing by, really. You know, it seems like it's going to be some party there on Saturday.
Good fun. Not with each other, mind you, but separately. 2 parties, I'd imagine.
Well, that's it, isn't it? But if you look at it, Sunderland have a chance to do the double over Newcastle. That'll be the first time since 1967 if they did. It's the 149th time we're at Derby at St James's Park. I suppose there's a few things to note.
The previous one was Paolo Di Canio's, wasn't it? The previous
Paolo Di
win.
Canio.
Yeah.
Paolo Di Canio did, yes. He won in his first game last year, a 3-0 victory. So, and then obviously the game earlier in the season where Sunderland won 2-1 was actually Gus Poyet's first game in charge as well. So
we call one of our managers now Paolo Di Canio. You know that? Did I tell you that? We've christened one of our managers Paolo Di Canio. Although
I can only imagine what he's like shouting and swearing.
He's a lovely man. Although we've actually said he's 7 parts Paolo Di Canio, 2 parts David Brent, and 1 part Roger Ramjet. Young people can ask older people who that is.
I don't know which bracket I fall into, but I know who it is.
Anyway, so you can tell me after that.
I will. So yes, it is Gus P. He's done a wonderful job at Sunderland. But this would be the crowning moment if they could beat Newcastle at St James's Park, Paul, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, it certainly would. And, looking at it, things are in their favour. Newcastle have injuries, like Remy is suspended. There is a chance Lee Cattermole might miss the game. He's carrying a bit of a calf injury. But if we look at the form table, we've got Sunderland lying in 5th place. That's looking back over the last 6 Premier League games. And they're actually unbeaten in their last 4 Premier League away games, which is a stunning effort. And that's including victories over Everton and Fulham. Newcastle, on the other hand, they're 12th in the form table. They've lost the last 2 home games, although it's probably a little unfair to call that out as it was against 1st and 2nd in the table in the shape of Manchester City and Arsenal. If we look at it, Newcastle, they've scored 32 goals. They conceded 28 this season. Sunderland have only scored 22 and conceded 36, so that's not really reflective of the form coming into this game. So everything is it is going up for Sunderland. And then there's actually there's a very interesting acquisition that they've made. Ignacio Nacho Sacco, who's an Argentinian striker. They've brought him in.
Cheese
Nacho.
and jalapenos.
Let the puns begin. So he has literally only arrived at the Stadium of Light.
Tasty.
He's Argentinian. He's 28. He scored goals everywhere he's been. This is probably his biggest move into Europe. He has played for AEK Athens.
Is he covered in cheese, though? That's the big question we all want to know tonight.
The answer is no.
No.
He's got a cool tattoo on his right arm. That's about the height of what he's scored, you know?
No, it's a start.
So, yeah, he looks a very talented player. Looks like he can get a lot of goals. And it's always difficult to pick players when they come into a side at first. He is very, very tempting because I've seen a bit of him for international, and he scored some great goals, So it's something to put him on your fantasy football radar.
How do we pronounce his name? Ignacio Sacco?
Sacco.
Sacco?
Sacco.
Okay, the S and the C. We'll have to get a Spanish speaker to confirm that. Whether the S and the C
about the height of it is, I know we shouldn't pronounce the G in his first name, so it should be Ignacio. As for the surname, not 100%.
If only we had a Spanish speaker around the place.
Sorry, he's no Nacho.
Portuguese speakers, they know nothing. Right, he's no Nacho. Let's we'll keep an eye on him. He's one for the. As Paul says, he does seem to have a little bit of quality and a little bit of class. Barini, what do you think of Barini? Has anyone been as impressed? I know I've been speaking about Barini as a sort of a potential signing later in the season for a good while, but he seems to be sort of finding a few links in that Sunderland front line.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. He's kind of got some decent poised returns over the last 2 weeks with a goal in game week 22 and an assist in game week 23. But he's 6.2. He's a striker. He's listed as a striker. He's kind of playing midfield.
Yeah.
It doesn't really do what he'd want to be far more consistent than that now for me to consider him for my third striker spot, because let's be honest, there are quite a number of strikers that fit into that category that are outperforming him at the moment, but that's not to say that couldn't change.
In Sunderland, Phil, while we stick with you, are you more looking for defenders and midfielders here? Particularly, let's start with the midfield. We spoke about Johnson last week and possibly about his disposability. Maybe he's less disposable this week, given the fact that he's now put 3 good game weeks together, back to back.
Yeah, it's a tough call. He's 5 goals and 2 assists in his last 3 weeks. Now, having gone from absolutely nothing before that.
You never had Gus Poyet though telling him,
Well, that's
you're
this
the best, Adam. You're the best.
You can do it. But I'm not so sure.
Was that a quiet word from Gus Poyet?
Yeah.
Okay.
With those goals, just thinking about it, I mean, they've all come in 2014, so he's possibly got the best goal return of any player in Europe. I'd be surprised if there's many ahead of him. Possibly talking about the most informed player in 2014.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting for it to fall off. I've been looking at him kind of going, nah, he can't keep this up. But the longer it goes on, the more I feel I might be missing. But listen, it's a time where Derby this week, anything could happen. We know he scored in that 3-0 win when Di Canio was in charge. But, listen, certainly if you're looking for a midfielder and you've got about the 6.7 mark to spend, you could do a hell of a lot worse.
If you don't have 6.7 and you wanted some coverage in the midfield, what about Ki Sung-young?
Yeah, he's another one that's popped up since Poyet's come in, and at 4.9 million. I mean, he's cheap as chips. You can't really argue with that. My major worry is that really he got a goal in game week 18 and a goal in game week 21 along with an assist, and that's it. Now I know Poyet's come in and kind of rejuvenised Sunderland to a large extent, but again I would have concerns as to whether it's something that's sustainable going forward. But I mean, at 4.9 million, he is a player that is going to get you 90 minutes and could just sit on the bench.
Hold on, I just have to pick this up. Hello? Yes. Mrs. Sung-young, he popped out. Okay, that's fine. Thanks, I'll tell Phil now. Thank you. So yes, he popped out apparently.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. I don't know. She felt she had to ring us and tell us. Anyway, so you're having a look at him anyway.
Listen, like I said, for 4.9 million, he's certainly a player that can come in. You know he's going to get you 90 minutes. He fits all the squad criteria. So, again, it's not a bad choice.
She's delighted we're speaking about him. Paul, is there anything else on the Sunderland team? Bardsley is someone I have in my squad. Still 4.5. He's been pretty good value over the last couple of weeks, and he's been popping up with a couple of points. Is he the defender you would consider there? Are there others? I
mean, realistically, Bardsley is he's the one that you go for because he's got a bit of a goal scoring threat. I mean, he put together that run of clean sheets in 16, 17 and 18. Those games against West Ham, Norwich and Everton. Since then, they've conceded just the odd goal here and there, however they're getting results. So, I mean, out of all of the defenders, I do like the look of Alonso. He's only come in recently from a very high caliber of football and a pedigree within his family.
He does look very good.
Yeah, so I mean, he has gotten. I mean, he's picked up the one clean sheet so far. He would be the other one that would interest me, but they're both 4.5 million, so it's really a toss of the coin as to where you want to go with it. I'd probably go Alonso just because I think he looks a little bit more interested in the attacking third. Probably
a bit more of a differential as well, as I know he has 0.1% of ownership, while Phil Bardsley has 2.1% of ownership. So that's a differential of a differential, really. Will we move on to Newcastle, the home team in the fixture? And as Paul mentioned, without Remy and without, I think, Gouffran and Cisse also out. So trouble up top for Newcastle.
Yeah, it's silly by Remy really to get sent off with that.
Silly boy.
Johnson,
that little kiss that you gave your man.
Yeah. Was it really worth it?
But yeah, you got to know.
Why
at this
don't you
point,
stick him one like Zenedine? At least
if you're gonna, you're gonna get sent off. If you're gonna do it properly. Yeah. No, we do not condone violence.
No, you can't condone that at all.
No. Listen, it sickens me. Simply because I brought him in last week and he went and got sent off.
I told you about him, Phil. I told you.
Yeah, it was that semi I had.
Semi for Remy. Yeah, well gone.
But listen, Johnson's red card has been rescinded, which I think is probably only fair. But Newcastle are in trouble going into this. I mean, we know Caballe's gone. Gouffran's a doubt going into it. Cisse looks like he's going to be out of action. Remy's missing. There's not a whole lot there for me. The only one I would have a look at, and I actually think could do quite well over the coming weeks, could be Hatem Ben Arfa. With Caballe now gone, Ben Arfa is going to come back into the side. And I think we could see him again back in the hole. He's probably the only shining light Newcastle have.
we saw a bit more of that last week, didn't we? He was involved a bit more in the game. He obviously didn't deliver. I suppose obviously they've got a player, Luke de Jong, coming in. He's on loan from Borussia Mönchengladbach. I don't know whether he'll make the game or not. I mean, he's a Dutch player. He looks fairly handy. In his days at FC20, he got 39 goals and 76 appearances. For Mönchengladbach, it's 6 goals and 36. So it really is a case of he's possibly Kabaya, I suppose, replacements. But off the back of that, I mean, I wouldn't be rushing to bring him in. And I know that you really would expect that Sunderland's luck is going to run out and that Newcastle should go win this game if there wasn't a derby and reviewing it objectively. But something just says to me that Sunderland are going to continue, and I really struggle to see where Newcastle points will come from. Would you guys agree with that, or are you going to be backing any Newcastle players this week to deliver?
I am not, Phil.
No, not particularly. Not this week. I think you're right. I like the look at Luke de Jong. I'll be keeping a very close eye on him. I think he could be one to add to the watch list for the coming weeks. But this week, I think if I was having anything, it would be a Sunderland player, namely Johnson, because he is in form. But apart from that, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in this fixture because we know what these games are like. Anything can happen on the day.
It could be 4-all. All right, let's leave that one and move on to the second focused game.
The second feature game is Cardiff City versus Norwich. Partly the reason for selecting this is they're two teams we perhaps don't talk enough about who are actually potentially on the verge of going on good runs. If we look into this game, Cardiff will be able to call upon their reinforcements for their game against Norwich. Obviously, Solskjaer, he's brought in Kenwyne Jones as he looks to add some more goals to the table. And the Norwegians also obviously landed deals for Fabio da Silva and Wilfried Zaha. And it looks likely that they'll be available prior to kickoff this weekend. It has to be mentioned that Cardiff need a change in form because obviously Malky Mackay, he got sacked after a 4-match defeat. There's 1 or 2 results in there prior to Solskjaer being hired, but Solskjaer has now lost 3 games in a row. It looks like there's going to be some defenders missing for Norwich, so it looks like Michael Turner and Elliot Bennett will still be out, and Jonathan Howson will be out too. But Jonas Gutierrez could make a return after he was ineligible to play against Newcastle last week. The corresponding fixture to this ended in 0-0 earlier in the season. A superb display from David Marshall really got Cardiff a point that day. If we look at the form, we know Cardiff they've scored 17 goals and conceded 40 this season. Norwich have scored 18, conceded 35. Cardiff, they're 20th in the league table, they're 20th in the form table. They've only had 1 point in the last 6 Premier League games. So they're a team that really need to change very, very quickly. And the acquisition of some world-class players is really going to go a long way to doing that for them. If we look at Norwich, they're doing fairly well, but they're 15th in the form table, so they're just kind of hovering along there. Obviously, it's a little bit unfair to talk about Cardiff City being on a good run under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer because after all, he has travelled to Old Trafford and to the Etihad and played against Man United and Man City. So in that side of things, you can't be too critical there. And the other defeat was against West Ham, who did get an admirable draw against Chelsea only last week. Obviously, Norwich, we're seeing them, they're starting to put together a run of clean sheets. They picked them up against Newcastle, they picked them up against Hull when they beat them 1-0. And then, they have also picked up a draw in recent weeks against Crystal Palace. So they are getting results against the teams who are supposedly around them in that relegation battle, which is kind of keeping them a little bit above the, I suppose, the bottom 3 spot. So, looking into this, I kind of see players on both sides. Now, for me, these players they are your squad players. They're your players who you throw in when you see a Norwich or a Cardiff when they're playing at home against a team that they could possibly get a result against. So obviously, Man United, Man City, you'll kind of ignore that. But if they're playing someone like a Swansea or anyone from the bottom half of the table, then absolutely you consider it a level playing field and that they could go on to deliver. With that, there's a couple of players. I suppose, firstly, if we look at the new players coming in for Cardiff, obviously, Fabio, it looks like he probably will go straight into the team. It looks like Zaha will go in. Zaha is probably the most exciting player too. We know that he's done it at championship level, helping Crystal Palace get promoted. He hasn't really gotten the opportunity, I would argue, at Manchester United this season. But potentially,
What do you mean he hasn't really got an opportunity? He hasn't got any opportunity whatsoever at Manchester United this season.
Yeah, well, he's got a couple of games and he's came on, but he hasn't done anything in his time on the pitch. You can argue if he bangs a goal in, but maybe does something special, he can keep a place in the team. Well, look, it was in Cardiff. It was in Capital One Cup game. I think he actually did play against Norwich earlier in the season, when United got a good win against them. I mean, he is a talented player. And I suppose the question to yourselves: I'm considering him as actually a replacement in my squad for Januzaj. I think Januzaj might be limited in his game time now with the arrival of Mata, and I suppose the form that Ashley Young is coming into. So he's one that I'd be considering bringing in, absolutely. Obviously, on the defensive side of things, I mean, we know that that Cardiff can get clean sheets. But the interesting thing will be where will Fabio fit into the team? Because I mean, in his early days at United, I mean, he had played some games in midfield, and it'll be interesting to see if Solskjaer elects to deploy him as a defender or as a midfielder. So he could become one of these players we've seen in previous seasons, like maybe Seamus Coleman 2 years ago, playing further up the park, but then still getting rewarded for defensive points. And that side of things, these are the type of players that I'd be looking at. And I mean, Fabio, he's 4.1 million, so he really is a bargain price to consider bringing in.
Zaha at the moment 5.4, by the way. So you'll have to spend a bit of money from Januzaj to get Wilfred.
I think that the biggest bargain for me is Kenwyne Jones. We know what he's about. We've seen him score goals. He's only 4.6 million, and like, if you were looking at it, obviously Aguero, well, he went off injured the other night. But if you took out an Aguero or pretty much any of your three forwards and threw in Jones, you're going to have a lot of money there to play with. Now we have to see how he'll fit in, and if you'll actually, I suppose, get a starting place ahead of maybe Campbell. And that I suspect he actually will. And off the back of that, we've seen him score goals in previous seasons. He's good at set pieces. Cardiff, Cardiff will be very, very strong off set pieces. So it really complements where they're getting rewards. Because if you think about it, Bellamy is the one who takes corners and free kicks, and his delivery is very, very good. And then we've seen Newnham and Whittingham, I suppose, particularly take free kicks and take pieces like that, set pieces, and very, very good at delivering the ball. So it's something to keep in mind if you're looking for those bargains, you're looking for that differential, you're looking for those players who, they're in a relegation dogfight, and if they don't start getting a few results over the next 4 or 5 games, you can virtually write them off as the first team being relegated. Yeah. So
the babyface assassin.
Of a coin. Yeah.
He might have a shave back in the championship. Phil, I know Paul extremely interested in this game. That's why he wrote that thesis on it. Are you as interested in this game? Are you going to be spending as much time considering it?
I certainly think there are choices to be made and players to be had from this one. I mean, Paul is right. Looking at Cardiff's fixtures, I mean, they've Norwich, Swansea, Villa, and Hull. Those next 4 games are going to tell us a lot about the destination of Cardiff's season, and certainly if they fail to get any meaningful results by the time they travel to White Hart Lane in game week 28, well then I think Paul's right, they're going to be in some serious trouble. For me, there are options, should I say. Kevin McNaughton is one I think fantasy managers should be aware of. If you're looking for a cheap defender, you won't get cheaper at 3.8 million. He started the last 2 games for Cardiff under Solskjaer, and we expect that to continue. And I think Cardiff could get the clean sheet this week. I mean, Norwich have only managed 7 goals away from home all season, which at this point in the year is ridiculously poor. I think it's the 3rd worst away
scoring record.
Yeah, behind Palace and Hull, if I remember correctly. But so I do fancy Cardiff for a clean sheet. And Paul's right. Kenwyne Jones could be a very interesting prospect for fantasy managers to have a look at. And at that price, your points per million return in terms of what your outlay is in terms of your returns you're getting could be very, very good, and certainly free up some cash to to spend either in your strike force if you wanted to maybe upgrade Aguero to Van Persie, if that might be something you want to do with he's been injured, or maybe you want to turn an Eriksen into Yaya Toure or something along those lines. Certainly, everything should be given due consideration. It certainly depends on where you are in your league and what you're looking to achieve. But for me, Norwich wise, I'm kind of steering clear at the moment. We know Johnson's red card was rescinded last week, so he should be alright to start at the back for Norwich. But there's nothing really anywhere else. Again, the only one that may do something this week for me is Hooper, but I wouldn't be bringing him in.
All right, let's move on. Third focused game is...
I think you'll be able to pick it out. What game would you most like to chat about?
Probably Manchester City and Chelsea.
On the money as usual, Andrew. Absolutely. This is going to be a really, really interesting fixture.
This is the two best teams in the Premier League going head to head at Man City's ground. Yeah. So how many goals will Manchester City win by, Paul?
68 goals is how many they've scored this season.
Well,
they've only conceded 26. Let's put that in context. Chelsea are right on their heels. They've only scored 43 goals and they've conceded just 20. So a little bit better defence, but very little in it. And you're right about the form. I mean, Man City have won their last 6 games. Chelsea has won their last 5. It would have been the last 6 if they hadn't slipped up and gotten that draw at West Ham midweek.
That'll hurt them, that draw. I think that'll be a draw that comes back to hurt them at the end of the season.
I would agree with you. It's those midweek battles against the tough teams where you should get the points and you don't. That's where you look back and really think about it. If you've lost there, especially considering that Manchester City, they were away to Spurs, and they went on and they got a 5-1 win, much like they did kind of 2 years ago. Obviously, other teams that beat. They demolished Cardiff. Newcastle, Swansea, Crystal Palace, and Liverpool in their last 6. So, that's just them scoring goals as we've come to expect. Chelsea, yes, they got that draw, but if you look back, they've also beaten Liverpool in their last 6. They've beaten Manchester United quite comfortably, and then they've travelled to Hull, they've travelled to Southampton, and they've also beaten Swansea at home. So all very, very good results. Looking at the game, I was very disappointed in the fact I brought Aguero into my team, and you saw him as actually Michael Owen very well described sprinting in full fashion. He just got a little bit of a nudge from Dawson, which caused his hamstring just to go. It only looks like a minor strain, so I wouldn't expect him to be out for too long. But still, the shots he was taking, he looked absolutely stunning when he was on the pitch. So I really think he would have went on and got a lot more points that night rather than just the 4 that he did pick up for the goal that he scored. Other than that, obviously, it was a bit of a physical game. Adebayor was throwing himself about. We saw Yaya Toure pop up with a goal, but again, he went off a little early. And then I suppose we'll talk about Eriksen probably later on in the pod.
So where are the goals going to come from? Where are the goals going to come from City? Because they can come from everywhere, all at once. But let's try and put a bit of shape on this now. Obviously, Zabaleta and Kolarov are a lot of people's favourites at the back. Let's probably not go there because
I'd say Clichy might get the nod ahead of Kolarov because Pellegrini tends to play him when he wants to be a little bit more defensive. He did the same thing against Tottenham. So if you have Kolarov, I'd probably be worried. We're thinking he might be a stud this week.
All right. Let's go to that midfield then. What are you thinking of?
He's the obvious choice, and really for this game, he's the type of player that Manchester City need to play well because, as we spoke about many times, Chelsea have a very, very powerful, dominant midfield, and this is where the game is going to be won and lost. So with that in mind, it's going to take a big performance, and I think Yaya Toure is the man to stand up and deliver. And the fact that Aguero it's unclear whether he's going to make the game now. That does put me off bringing in Silva. But I do think his points return is a bit better when he's got Sergio Aguero.
Paul, can I ask you, is this a week maybe that a brave manager might just say, right, Aguero's gone for at least a week, I'm going to get rid of him and bring in Dzeko? Dzeko scored one the other day, and I think he got 2 assists as well. He. I think over the last couple of weeks he's played more and more and more. And at 6.8, I think he was 6.7, but he's gone up overnight. I think 6.8 he is now. He looks like real value at the moment, doesn't he?
He looks like spectacular value, but I think the problem is if you're going to do that, you have to kind of pick two Manchester City forwards and be resigned to the fact that only one of them may play. Because obviously Negredo was there. He had a bit of a shoulder injury, so he wasn't involved during the week, but you'd expect him to be back this weekend. You know Pellegrini likes him. Jovetic came on. I mean, he got a goal. The deflection was involved. I would still see him as bottom of the pecking order, but I really think that, yes, you can bring in Dzeko, but I wouldn't be surprised if you were disappointed and he didn't actually play. So, I mean, with that in mind, it's a bit of a gamble. But however, if you're looking at having, well, look, I'll go for a Dzeko and a Negredo this weekend. Look, if one of them doesn't play, I don't mind, because either Will and Man City are scoring so many goals at home, an average of 40, you'll pick up points. And if they both play, well, then that's an absolute bonus. But that's a lot. It's a bit rich to do that. So that'll be my thinking on it. So, until we get the press conferences, it may even be Sunday morning until we actually really have an understanding of who's going to play, and that's too late for the deadline.
Phil, so enough saving Phil saving his voice here. I want to hear it now. What's your reading this game?
Yeah, listen, I think you have to back City for goals. On the point about Dzeko, I mean, I've been looking into some of his stats over the last couple of weeks. If we go back over the last 6 weeks, he actually has a better minutes per chance ratio than both Luis Suarez and Emmanuel Adebayor. They will be two strikers that many fantasy managers would obviously have on their side, especially Suarez. Like Dzeko's getting a chance every 17.9 minutes compared to Suarez's 24.7. He is going to get chances, and Paul's right, it's if he plays, and that's the biggest thing. And we've seen time and time again, whether it was last season under Mancini, this year under Pellegrini, City love to rotate and just frustrate the hell out of us. But certainly I think Dzeko could be one to look at just while Aguero is getting back. Obviously we'll have to wait and see the full extent of his hamstring injury. I think it's worse than what the game itself says, 75%. Yeah. I think it's worse than that.
And the fact that he came back from another injury and then he's reactivated, they might be especially careful with bringing him back the next time.
Yeah, because they're going to need him for the run-in, there's no doubt about it. But Aguero is prone to muscle injuries. We've seen over the last number of years, he is prone to muscle injuries. It's just one of those things, But yeah, I think there's going to be goals in this one. I don't fancy either side for clean sheets, but I wouldn't be rushing out to bring any Chelsea players in. Certainly, if I had the likes of Hazard or Oscar, I'd play them. But really, for me, Paul's right. Without Aguero, Silva suffers. Yaya is going to be the boss in the centre of midfield. He's going to probably have a deeper line midfield role this week to try and break up the Chelsea attack. That obviously the amount of threat they have in the middle of the park. He's going to have to sit in there and try and break that up. But yeah, for me, this game could be very well just one to sit back and watch rather than investing heavily in fantasy players.
Okay, Jack Rodwell might even get his game.
Who?
Yeah. Just thought I might mention that. Right, and on the Chelsea side of things, Phil, I mean, you looked at how they'll be stopped, but it's all about midfield, really, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's the usual. It's Hazard, it's Oscar. There's no point in painting a picture any different than that. Eto'o, I've seen a lot of fantasy managers have kind of, after his hat-trick against United, decided to take a gamble on him. But for me, he's not consistent enough. At 8.3 million is a hell of a lot of money. But yes. Yeah, it really is. For me, Hazard and Oscar for Chelsea, I wouldn't be too confident of anything else.
That gamble is really off the back of Torres being injured, really, isn't it? He's out for a few weeks, so they kind of have to play Edo. I'd actually prefer to see them play Bath, but it looks unlikely.
All right, let's move on. We have best of the rest now. Right, best of the rest. Let us start. West Ham at home to Swansea. This should be fairly quick. No West Ham players coming in, Phil.
West Ham for a clean sheet.
West Ham for a clean sheet, inspired by their brave draw against Chelsea. You reckon they're going to keep it up?
Not so much just by the draw from Chelsea. That's not necessarily a fluke.
No, it was hard work.
West Ham have
and a bit of 1900s thinking.
Have the joint are joint top of the table in terms of clean sheets for the season on 9, along with Arsenal.
Very interesting.
So, in fairness to them, they are keeping clean sheets. James Tompkins, for me, at 4.6 million is probably the best choice there. And I do fancy them for the clean sheet. But outside of that, as far as they go, that's it.
All right.
Defense.
And Paul, would you go along with that? Would you pick out a West Ham defender?
I'd echo those thoughts as well. Yeah, absolutely. Once they can keep Bonnie quiet, they'll be fine. I know there was a few goals from midfield, but they weren't particularly good goals. They were more lucky for Swansea in the recent weeks. So I wouldn't expect that to continue.
All right, turning to Swansea, Phil and Boney, obviously, as Paul mentioned already. Apart from him, anyone else?
No, for me, no. But despite the fact that Shelby got on the score sheet in midweek, I still wouldn't be tempted.
5.4, I think a lot of people will.
Yeah. It was a terrible goal, though. I mean, it was just two deflections. He shoots from everywhere, and 9 times out of 10 it ends up in Rose Bed. So.
Touch of Bobby Zamora.
All right, let's move on to Everton against Aston Villa. Now, I suppose a lot of people will be probably put off by Everton's defeat and comprehensive defeat at the hands of Liverpool. But a word on Everton, I think 6 of their next 8 games are at home.
Yeah, they have a good run.
So they have a great run coming up.
They have a good run of games coming up. I mean, it's Villa at home. Then they travel to White Hart Lane, and then they're home against Palace, away to Chelsea, home against West Ham, away to Newcastle, home against Cardiff. I mean, when you look at it, it's week on, week off, pretty much for the next 6 or 8 weeks.
They've problems up front. They're missing Coleman at the back and Distan. They're missing Oviedo and they're still missing Gibson, obviously, in the middle of the field. But they've real problems up front. Lukaku gone, Delafeu gone, Kone injured, Traore
injured with Kone as well.
Yes,
so
Traore, their new big lad, still not in. So they haven't got a lot of options up front.
No, but it's going to be Naismith. The Albino striker strikes again.
Yeah.
But for me, I actually haven't looked at any Everton players this week.
Yeah, it's wait for Coleman to come back and hold your cards there.
Yeah, and that's something that I have a problem with because my wildcard has to be played this week. Do I leave Coleman in? Do I take him out?
He's probably not gonna gain any value when he's injured. So
he could drop the Spondulis.
So you might actually earn from it. You could get him out this week and bring him back in next week.
Hopefully, we'll see. But for me, it's all about Villa this week.
All right. All about Villa. Let us move to Villa then. The away team. I think Everton will be well organised and difficult to break down. But who do you think Villa will? They are getting their stuff together up front. Benteke.
Benteke's back.
He's back, or he's just back.
3 goals in 3 games. Boom. 8.7 million, and I have to say I am very, 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 very tempted to bring him in with my wild card this week.
I think that's a great move. I think you should definitely do that.
Okay. Well, look at it this way. They play Everton this week, then it's West Ham in 25, Cardiff in 26, Newcastle in 27, Norwich in 28. There's a nice run of games that Benteke's going to have to prove to me and all the doubters out there that he is in fact back.
And the Belgian national team manager.
Of course. Of course, my horse. But I think he's worth a look, but it's not necessarily a long-term fix, but I do think that if he can get some goals over that period that I just mentioned, you could sell him in game week 29 before they travel to City, then it's Chelsea and then United in 32. There's that kind of run of 4 games with Stoke in the middle that kind of would rule Benteke out for me.
Give us some players apart from Benteke. Just Benteke?
For me, it's just Benteke. There's 1 or 2 kind of floating around there, but I think realistically, the way my squad is shaping up, there's not a whole else I would look to. I do think that there could be value at the back over the coming weeks for Villa, but possibly not this week.
Paul Delph, fine form, fine goals. He struggled with after having that big injury in his career, but he looks like a really decent player, and at 4.3 million, he looks like a proper squad midfielder. Yeah,
I'd have to agree in the fact that he plays all the time, but he is very defensive. He does play very deep. So, I mean, really, you'd be probably only getting your 2 or 3 points from him each week. So, off that basis, I'd probably be a little bit put off. I'd really rather have a squad player who's able to maybe get you 8 or 10 points when you throw him in. But I don't think Delph has that in his locker. And that's how they're down to how he's been deployed in the 4-3-3 that they're playing there.
Apart from
Yeah,
Benteke, who is getting your eye?
So look, Vyman he's a player that we speak about every so often. He is the man who was banging form as well. Obviously, he's got 2 goals in his last 2 games. Now, look, he's only scored 3 goals for the season. But having said that, it's all about jumping on players when they hit a bit of form. So, I mean, on that basis, he absolutely. I mean, he's going to be playing the same amount of games as Benteke's going to be playing. He's 5.8 million, and if Benteke is in fact back, well, he's going to benefit through getting either goals and assists as the pair will be playing along with each other.
No mention of poor El Grantholt. Will we move on to Fulham and Southampton? Fulham, a club that in transition and bringing a good few players in over the window, Paul.
Yes, Fulham. Difficult to see where their season is going to turn around. You know, I mean, if we look at it, I mean, they've got one of the biggest squads in the league. Having said that, I mean, if you looked at the players stand alone, you'd think great stuff. I mean, we know Roddy Yeager's done it for Wigan years ago. Obviously, Berbatov, Darren Bent. You would have thought that was a fairly decent attacking lineup. And then obviously in the midfield, well, look, they've got Dempsey there, they've got Parker, Duff, Tarak, Kakanitskas, Richardson, Dijaga. He's done well. He's done well in stages. There's another 4 or 5 more that we could name. We won't. And okay, in defence, we've seen Hangeland come back in. That's actually going to really benefit them. So maybe they might be able to start become a bit more solid. But I don't know if it's the case that they have too many players. I don't know if it's the case that there's not enough spirit. I struggle to see where things are going to come back. I mean, Sidwell, who we really would have only considered a defensive midfielder, and probably one that you wouldn't pick for your fantasy team, is their most informed player at the moment. And I think that kind of speaks volumes. You know, I mean,
let's move on to Southampton then. The away team there, probably more players that are considerable there. Fonte on the score sheet again, 5.1. Lallana, a lot of people's favourite, 7.6. And Rodriguez up front, a good bargain and good value at 6.4, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, to my own detriment, I was nearly writing Lallana off and kind of said he's got his returns. Maybe we're going to start seeing a decline from him. And sure enough, he comes back with a goal against the Gunners, picks up 3 bonus points, and the fact that I hadn't deployed my wildcard meant he was still on my side, and I was very, very happy.
Good.
But this week, certainly, you'd have to look to him for points in terms of Southampton's threat going forward with 3 goals and 3 assists in his last 7. Outside of that, I mean, Rodriguez up front is possibly the other option, but I actually think that Fulham will get a goal at home. And I wouldn't back Southampton for the clean sheet. Okay,
let us move on to Hull City and Tottenham Hotspur. Let's start with the home team because that'll be pretty quick. Phil, you have your hand up immediately. Give us this quickly.
It's Tottenham for me all the way with a sneaky keep an eye on Shane Long.
Okay.
Don't bring him in, just have a look, see how he goes.
5.6.
There's better fixtures to come for him, and certainly with a bit of match fitness, he could do quite well.
Alright, the Spurs, big defeat. Tim Sherwood's first, I think, league defeat. Paul, but up front, Adebayor, Soldado, both of them, Ericsson in the middle of the park.
So, I mean, really, if you look at that defeat, they were outplayed by a better team. So I know that there was a red card and penalty shouts, all that sort of stuff, but regardless, Tim Sherwood was man enough to admit it that, look, even without anything, they were the better team and they were probably going to lose. It was just, I suppose, exacerbated by what happened on the night. Ericsson, his delivery is possibly the best in the Premier League from set pieces. Even for the goal that was disallowed, the ball that he played in was absolutely stunning. So you have to expect more assists to keep coming from him, and even when he gets the shooting boots on, get a few more goals as well. Because if he starts getting onto the set pieces from a bit of distance, he absolutely pinged him in the top corner with the accuracy that he has. And Adebayor, he is one where, last week didn't go well for the whole Tottenham team. Give him another game or two, and if he doesn't score this game and the next game, then it's time to consider moving him out, and he's kind of contributed his piece for the season, which is so on that side of things. I'd be backing Adebayor to get on the score sheet here. I'd be backing a big response from Tottenham. However, Hull, it's far away. It's a difficult place to go to try and get a result.
Yeah, I would just like to warn everyone at this point, I've just gotten rid of Adebayor and I brought in Dzeko. So expect Adebayor to get a hat-trick, and Dzeko might pick up an injury in the first half.
Well, I mean, I expect, like Paul, Adebayor to do well. I thought he could do something last week. Obviously, that didn't work out. So I kind of had a little look again at the stats, and believe it or not, all 5 of his goals this season have come on the road. So that's 5 goals in 7 games he's registered now. And it would seem that obviously the way Spurs are set up away from home suits Adebayor. He likes to play his trade on his travels, and we'll be hoping he can do the same again this week. And just to echo Paul's testament of Eriksen's class, the guy's unbelievable. If he can really get ticking, I think we could see some serious points from him before the season's out.
All right, let's move on. Stoke City and Manchester United are going to make this quick. No Stoke players.
No.
Manchester United. Right, let's get straight to Juan Mata. He's gone up to 9.6 now. He looks he's going to be in there behind the front two, sort of all around the middle of the park.
Yeah.
He got the most touches on the pitch the other night, despite not finishing the game. 69 or 64 touches.
Yeah, and that's no real surprise. I mean, at the game, I could see he played Rooney's role, except for kind of a little bit out the tackling, and he played a little more centrally. So he was up front, or he was dropping back to halfway line, or he was even coming back to take the ball off defenders at some point and kind of playing 1-2s and getting around the place. And he did look to play 1 or 2 like little clever flicks over the top and I suppose between the lines, as people like to say. Looks very, very good. Moyes now has a big, I suppose, a difficult selection choice to make. I may expect him to. If we take it in context, it was a fantastic debut, because he probably only trained with the players once, maybe, and he went straight in. And
so have you got him? So have you got him?
Yeah, he's in my team. Yeah.
Phil, is he in your team? Juan Mata. Will he be after you play your wild card?
As it stands at the moment, I'm tinkering with my wildcard.
Yes, we know that.
He is in the team, but his place is under threat.
Yeah, whatever. Right. I've been doing this podcast too long now to be put off by your little back chats, and you, Paul. Won't take any of it from either of you. Right. Apart from Juan Mata, I brought in Rooney up front. I think Mata and Rooney. See, everyone's going to go for Van Persie, but at 13.6, Rooney at 11.3 is a little bit of value. I've gone for Rooney. I think Mata and Rooney, despite what everyone thinks, are going to really play well together. In fact, I would probably see the two of them playing in the hole with Van Persie just ahead of them, and both have the right and are encouraged to go all over the pitch. Paul, what do you think about that as a strategy?
I mean, looking at it,
2 in the hole.
2 in the hole. I mean, look, when you think about it, there's definitely space in that United midfield for a bit more class. So if they want to do that, I think it could be very, very good. So they'd have to redeploy 2 holding midfielders. And then go for your attacking diamond, if you will. So that will be a way you get Mata, you get Van Persie, and you could even get a Januzaj or a Young into the team that way. I mean, that's the way Manchester City kind of line up. That's the way we see Chelsea line up. So there are options there. The other thing I think would be quite interesting was that he seemed fairly rigid in what he was doing, David Moyes. He left Mata in that number 10 position for the whole time he was on the pitch. Now, we swapped Van Persie off for Rooney on, and Rooney went up to be the furthest man forward in that position. We saw him, I suppose, 2 and 3 seasons ago, where he got all those goals. It could be another thing he could do is he could leave, make Rooney number 1, and then have Mata playing in behind with him. And they looked arguably slightly better together when they were on the pitch. So, I mean, look, I would say David Moyes is probably looking at the team's training this morning, going, right, well, what am I going to do this weekend? You know, he's still figuring the team out. But it's not a bad shout, because, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising to see Van Persie get injured again. I mean, he's come back from injury, and we know in previous years he's been fallible to it. So I'm not going to bring Rooney in just yet, because I think the rotation risk is just a little bit too much for me, but it's something that I'll be watching very, very closely, especially considering Aguero was kind of...
He's not a rotation risk. You know, Rooney's not a rotation risk. If he's fit, he plays. I mean, he's going to be the club captain. He's going to have say over what transfers they're bringing in, according to his new contract. So I have to say, I think if he starts, if he's fit, he starts. And if and he has to get the three of them on the pitch. He has to get the three of them on the pitch.
My one concern would be that he might try to push Rooney further back. But I think if he does that, Rooney will probably leave the club in the summer. So I think it's highly unlikely, but it would still be a concern.
Let's move on. West Brom and Liverpool. Right, Pepe Mel. Briefly, West Brom looked good. They were unlucky to lose that cracking 4-3 game against Aston Villa. But there's a lot of openness in their play. I'm not going near them with Phil's barge pole yet. But they do look attractive. They look nice, but leaking goals all over the place. Phil, what do you think? Paul, if you're going.
Well, I mean, just looking at it, if you consider it, they have a new manager in their team on the up. I mean, if I was in the position to play my wild card this week, I might look at putting in 3 West Brom players,
Whoa. That would be a surprise. What did you just say there? We are listening, by the way. I know this pod is pretty much all you this evening, but you definitely are an evening boy. I thought you were a morning person, but oh no, hell, does Paul get going in the evening? So go on, surprise the hell out of us with your 3 West Brom players.
Oh no, any 3. And Phil, if you want to note that down there.
Carol Vorderman is not playing this game.
I knew that's where he was going with that. He's like, if I had my wildcard, I'd bring in 3 West Brom players.
Yeah.
Phil, you should take note of that.
Yeah. So that's
Mama didn't raise no fool.
No. Anyway, 1 from the top and 3 from anywhere else. Right, Liverpool.
Suarez.
I'm not even going to ask Paul now. It's just wasting
Suarez,
time.
move on. Next game.
Grand. I love it.
I do have a question. What do you think of Sturridge?
He's a good player.
For Suarez and Sturridge in the team. They're back on form. That partnership looks pretty good. Although they fought a little bit the other night, but
yeah, listen, there is certainly an argument to be made to have both of them in the side. And they did it earlier on the season, but for me, I don't like getting overexposed to one team in one area, so I'd stick with one.
So you're selling Suarez and you're buying Sturridge and you're getting a bit of value for your wild card. I know, I can see it.
No.
Yeah.
No.
He says no, Paul.
For me, it's Suarez all the way. Yes, Sturridge is going to get you returns, but I think over the remainder of the season, if we were to start the point scoring from now, Suarez is going to get more.
Two, you were a bit. You've quite high Sturridge levels yourself. In with the spoon. The two you stirring around there.
Yeah.
Right.
But, yeah. For me, it's Suarez. I wouldn't fancy Gerrard this week, although the fact that I did speak about him last week.
Why do you think his legs are gone? Do you?
No, I spoke about him last week.
His legs are gone. I'll tell you that.
Abuse from 2 years. I was proved right to have him.
He scored with his head. He scored with his head. He can't use his feet.
Listen.
Barely get up there.
All I'm concerned with is attacking returns.
Yeah.
He got those last week.
We said that he might have a set piece return. That's what we called out. You know, and that's all that happened. It was just a return.
I couldn't care whether it went in off his arse. It went in, and that's all that matters. I was right. You were wrong. End of story.
All right. Arsenal and Crystal Palace. Surely a captain's going to come from here. Let's start with the home team. Arsenal. Giroud up front, 114, 8.8. I know he hasn't convinced us, but you see, for that he's the only one up there.
No, I spoke about Giroud last week and kind of said he hasn't got that spark. He is missing something, and I'm surprised to see that Arsenal haven't brought in reinforcements up front thus far. We have a day to run.
Yes.
They might do it tomorrow.
Yeah,
possibly. For me, there's only one player worth looking at the moment. That's Santi Cazorla. Wilshere is out. Walcott's out. Flamini suspended. Ramsey has suffered
out for a while.
Yeah, he's suffered another setback. He's out for 4 to 6 weeks. Arsenal have some serious problems in their midfield because unless Rosicky gets the all-clear to play with a face mask, they're going to really struggle to actually field half these in midfield this weekend. I mean, you've got Cazorla, you've Ozil, you've Gnabry. Arteta's back as well. They could put Chamberlain in, but he's been out for so long now. I think he's struggling for
Mayachi.
Who?
Frimpong.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's Cazorla for me is the only one in this game. I do think, yes, Giroud may pop up with a goal, but I do think in terms of having 3 striker spots to fill, I think Suarez, Rooney or Van Persie, Adebayor could get more goals than Giroud, and that's why I'd look to them instead of him.
I think you're right. Paul?
Yes, I would agree. I think actually there is a potential for Arsenal to be probably in maybe 4th place in say 3 or 4 weeks' time. I think this is the point where we're going to see them now fall away. They are absolutely stricken with injuries. It's incredibly unlucky that they've had so many of their key players get injured when they were in such good form. And for me, Yeah, look, it's Giroud, it's Cazorla. Giroud hasn't quite convinced us. He's gotten goals, but probably because he's the only striker there for Arsenal. Arguably, if you had a better quality, maybe even a Zeko, you would see Arsenal would have probably scored more goals this year. Having said that, I'm not going to bring in Giroud. Cazorla is absolutely somebody who you should bring in. I mean, he's been banging the goals and he's been doing very well. But I just think Arsenal are going to fall away now over the next couple of games. We called out that a draw or defeat was on the cards during the week, and that came to fruition. So I hope they go on and prove me wrong, but for the fantasy team, I don't see anybody reliable enough to include. And as I think that they're going to struggle over the next few weeks, I'm now walking away from the Arsenal defence as well. Yes.
What about Bakary Sagna? Is the one name you haven't mentioned?
Bakary. Good old Bakary. It's this week, clean sheet against Palace. You could expect it. I mean, they struggled away to Crystal Palace earlier in the season when they had all those players.
There'll be a big reaction after being held by Southampton. There's going to be a big reaction, I'd say.
Yeah, well, I think the fact that Palace have only managed, I think it's 5 goals away from home all season, I think you could be safe enough looking to Arsenal over a clean sheet. So if you've got Chesney, I'd stick him in. If you have the likes of Sagna or Mertesacker, certainly I'd be playing them. But yeah.
One of the most on form people in the game at the moment, Jason Punchin. 5 million. Is he the only Crystal Palace player?
Yes.
Grant. Paul?
Yes and no. They've got one or two players coming in, so we'll see if he remains the main man.
All right, for this week though.
For this week, yeah. And I mean, look, we tipped them last week and he delivered. So.
And we have tipped their defence for those squad defenders. Right, that is best of the rest. Very long-winded best of the rest. I hope you'll be quicker for Captain's Picks. Right, Captain's Picks. Chesney. right, lads, go for it. Paul, you've been holding all the cards today. Go for it. Give us 2 Captain's Picks there.
Yeah, so 2 Captain's Picks.
It's a tough one.
In reality, it's very, very tough this week. I suppose the number one player that I'm kind of looking at, and it's a very strange one, is Yaya Toure. And then outside of that, I'm actually struggling. I mean, yes, Suarez away to West Brom is probably the other spot, but I wouldn't be saying that with wholehearted confidence.
All right. Phil?
Yeah, this week is an interesting one. Suarez away to West Brom, much like Paul. Yeah, you can probably see it. Every time we write him off, he seems to do it. So, it's very difficult not to at least consider
and every time we tip him, he seems to do it too.
He just seems to do it all the time. But yeah,
he just seems to do it.
For me, I think have a look at a United player with Rooney or Van Persie for captain this week. Personally, if it was me, I'd be looking to Van Persie, but certainly against Stoke,
Rooney's going to be busy.
Rooney or Van Persie, really, because I mean Stoke, they have conceded the most amount of goals over the last 6 game weeks at home, with 16.
And they've only Mark Hughes as a manager.
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly there's a viable captain shout there. Adebayor will be another one for me. We've spoke about how his away record has gone with 5 goals in 7 games, all 5 of those on the road. So he be, again, is another one for me to have a look at. But outside of that...
You're not making Benteke captain, Phil, no?
No.
Just checking.
Outside of that, I think Cazorla against Palace could also be an option. I do think Arsenal will beat Palace convincingly this weekend.
If I had more Arsenal players up front, I might have gone for that, but I don't. So
Giroud misses too many chances to be considered. That's my problem.
I've gone with your logic, and because I have Rooney instead of Van Persie, I'm going to captain Rooney. I'm going to vice captain Sturridge because I don't have Sturridge. I don't have Suarez. I've Sturridge.
That's not a bad show.
So that's it. That's Captain's Picks. Right, just time to tell you about live time on Saturday. Back to the regular time between 10:30 and 11:30 on the Twitter machine. Hashtag live time at Fantasy Prem Tips. I have a feeling Paul might be woken up early to do that this Saturday, but that's just a feeling. Maybe you guys can confirm that.
More than a feeling.
He's an evening guy, so we might let Paul get up in the morning. Paul, you're happy. You've played your wild card, haven't you?
I did, yes.
Yeah.
I played it last week, yeah.
And it filled. He has that strategy. Whatever the temptation is, keep it in your pocket. Keep it in your pocket. Play it last.
I just wanted to have a sneaky peek at Paul first.
Hmm.
I'm now looking up his skirt.
All right.
So, with that, I've got Adebayor, Aguero, Suarez up front. So, obviously, Aguero is now an issue, let's call it. And the midfield, we've got Hazard, Yaya Toure, the Noon in as a squad player, the Cardiff City man, and then Mata and Januzaj. So Mata made a guest appearance in the team at Eriksen's. I took Eriksen's position for me, so that's how it's a little overloaded with Man United. And then at the back, I'm held on to Coleman. I've got Speroni in goal, so I fancy the Crystal Palace to get some clean sheets. And then looking at having have Flanagan in there for Liverpool. Obviously came in and got the clean sheet during the week. And then I suppose the third defender place will go to either Chambers, Mariappa or Whittaker, and that's really dependent on the fixtures that they got. Whoever's at home with the most attractive clean sheet fixture will go. So I'm kind of looking at the fact that Chelsea, City and United are going to go on a strong run. And then Adebayor, I'm going to keep him until he starts to go off the boil, and as we've outlined through the pod, there are a couple of options to consider. So,
how many points is he behind Phil? How many points is he behind Phil?
82 points.
82 points. I'll give you a little bit of free advice, Paul. You got to
Go
look for
on.
that differential. That's all I'm saying. All right, let's leave the pod there. Thank you very much for your company. Fantasy Premier League Transfers.com for all your news tomorrow, Friday, and on Saturday morning. Last minute team news, rumours. Of course, the last day of the window is open tomorrow, so God knows what new little shiny toys we might have in the pram next week. But until then, we must say adieu. Adieu.
Hasta luego.
Au revoir.
Meant that in the Shakespearean form, not the Anelka. Right.
Okay.